Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. Even my ex earned more, she said casually, like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was the kind of line that cuts deep, dressed as a joke, tossed across the dinner table while she scrolled through her phone. She didn't even look up when she said it. That was the moment I knew I was finished playing her game. I didn't argue. I didn't remind her of the bills I paid, the hours I worked, the stability I gave her while she drifted from hobby to hobby, job to job. I didn't raise my voice. I just nodded slightly, as if her words had landed where she wanted them to, and excused myself from the table. What she didn't see was that while she thought she had the last laugh, I had already decided what came next. That night, while she slept soundly, I sat in the glow of my laptop screen. Account by account, dollar by dollar, I built a new structure. Quiet, invisible, untraceable to her eyes. For years, she had leaned on my earnings as if they were guaranteed, as if stability was her birthright. Now, every cent was being pulled out from under her feet. The plan wasn't impulsive. I didn't rush. I moved slowly, deliberately, making sure nothing looked suspicious. A transfer here, a closure there. She never checked the accounts anyway. She had no reason to. Why would she, when she believed she held the upper hand? Her arrogance was my shield, and it gave me all the time I needed. Days turned into weeks, and I watched her keep up the act. She bragged to friends about her independence, laughed about how I was comfortable while she aimed higher. Every time she slipped one of those barbs into conversation, it only steeled me further. She didn't realize she was mocking the very foundation of her own life. By the third week, everything was set. My savings, investments, and every trace of liquidity tied to me was locked behind walls she couldn't touch. Joint accounts drained, her access quietly revoked. She still swiped her card at cafes and boutiques, still ordered packages that showed up at the door, completely unaware the well was about to run dry. I didn't confront her. I didn't warn her. I let her keep laughing, keep performing, keep stacking insults on a man who no longer cared to respond. Because I knew how this story would end. She thought her words made her strong. But soon, she'd be standing alone, counting pennies where dollars once flowed. And she'd finally understand the cost of her casual cruelty. The first crack in her world came at the checkout line of a high-end boutique. She had picked out a designer bag, the kind she bragged about online, holding it up in front of the mirror like it was a crown. The cashier rang it up. She swiped her card, and the machine beeped. Declined. She frowned, swiped again. Same result. Her smile faltered as she handed over another card. Declined again. The girl behind the counter shifted awkwardly, while a line formed behind her. I wasn't there, but I didn't need to be. I could picture every detail. She always thrived on appearances. Her image was everything. And there she was, standing in front of strangers, her mask slipping. She ended up walking out empty-handed, cheeks flushed, muttering something about a banking error. That night, she stormed around the house, tossing receipts onto the counter, hissing under her breath. The bank must have frozen something. I'll call tomorrow. I sat quietly, reading, not offering a single word. She didn't ask me for help, because asking me would mean admitting weakness. That was always her blind spot. She mistook my silence for indifference, not realizing it was control. Over the next week, the walls closed in on her. More declined payments, more awkward moments. At the cafe she loved, she had to put back her order. At the salon, she pretended she had forgotten her wallet. Every time, her pride forced her to smile it off. She didn't realize she wasn't just broke. She was isolated. She started digging, checking accounts she never looked at before, only to find balances she couldn't explain. Money that had been there for years was gone, like it had vanished into thin air. She snapped at me once, waving her phone in my face, demanding to know if I'd seen anything strange. I simply shook my head and said, "Banks make mistakes sometimes." Then I went back to what I was doing, as if her crisis was background noise. That silence cut her deeper than any fight could, because she knew, for the first time, she wasn't in control. She had mocked me for not being enough, for being predictable, steady. But it was that same steadiness that gave me the patience to dismantle her world piece by piece. And still, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just watched as her empire of arrogance began to crumble in plain sight. She thought the worst part was the missing money. But what was coming next would sting much more. It didn't take long for the whispers to start. Her friends, the ones she always tried to impress with overpriced cocktails and shopping bags, began to notice the cracks. She used to show up to every brunch with something new, a pair of heels, a piece of jewelry, always ready to brag about how easily she treated herself. But now, she arrived late, sometimes not at all, her excuses piling up as fast as her lies. One evening, I overheard her on the phone, her voice strained but trying to stay light. She was telling a friend that she was cutting back to save for something big, that she was being responsible for once. But I could hear the edge of panic under her laughter. They could hear it too. Friends who once envied her lifestyle now saw someone cornered, struggling to keep up the act. The mask slipped further when a close friend tagged her in a photo online. It was at a casual dinner, nothing fancy. She was wearing an old dress she hadn't pulled out in years, her smile forced. In the comments, someone joked about her budget chic look. Normally, she'd fire back with sarcasm, but this time she stayed silent. Silence was unlike her, and that silence told everyone more than she wanted. At home, she snapped more often. Every little thing set her off. The way I folded the laundry, the way I didn't answer fast enough when she spoke. What she didn't realize was that my calmness wasn't passivity. It was precision. I wasn't reacting because I didn't need to. Every outburst only confirmed that the control she once flaunted was gone. I watched her pride fight with her reality. She tried to borrow money discreetly, reaching out to her sister, hinting to her parents. But they didn't trust her excuses. They had seen the same arrogance, the same wasteful habits. Nobody wanted to be her safety net. For the first time, she was discovering what it felt like to stand alone. I didn't mock her. I didn't remind her of her words, that casual line comparing me to her ex. I didn't need to. She remembered it herself every time she swiped a card and it failed, every time she sat across from friends who were no longer impressed. The money was gone, yes. But what hurt her more was the collapse of the image she had built, the image of a woman untouchable, always above, always secure. And the more she scrambled, the more obvious it became. She wasn't untouchable. She was exposed. Her desperation showed in small, almost pitiful ways at first. She lingered around me more, asking vague questions about work, about money, about whether I had noticed anything strange with the accounts. She was fishing for answers without admitting she needed them. I gave her nothing, just calm, measured silence. The same silence she once mocked now suffocated her. One night, after another argument with her sister over the phone, she finally turned to me. Her voice was tight, almost trembling. "You've always been good with this stuff. Maybe you could help me figure out what's going on." For years, she never gave me credit for anything beyond being steady. Now, that steadiness was the only thing she had left to lean on. I looked at her, expressionless, and simply said, "I'm sure you'll figure it out." Then I went back to my book. That was the moment she realized the truth, that I wasn't her safety net anymore. She tried to regain ground, acting sweet, cooking dinner, leaving small compliments like breadcrumbs. But it was all performance, an echo of affection she thought could distract me from months of disdain. I saw through every gesture. And the colder I remained, the harder she pushed, until her mask cracked again and the anger returned. By now, her friends had grown distant. No more invitations to expensive nights out. No more envy disguised as admiration. She sat scrolling through her phone in silence, watching others post the kind of life she used to flaunt. The likes and comments she once thrived on had turned into silence too. The stage was gone, and without it, she looked lost. At work, it wasn't much better. She had always relied on charm more than competence, but charm doesn't pay overdue bills. I overheard her on a call once, her boss reminding her that performance mattered more than excuses. She slammed the phone down and cried in the bathroom, thinking I didn't hear. But I heard everything. She thought she could wound me with her casual cruelty, comparing me to a man who wasn't even in her life anymore. She thought I would swallow it, as I always had, and keep carrying her weight. Instead, I had shifted the entire balance without raising my voice. And now she wasn't fighting me. She was fighting the emptiness I left behind. The truth was dawning on her, piece by piece. She hadn't just lost money. She had lost me. It was only a matter of time before her pride gave way to pleading. One evening, I came home to find her sitting at the kitchen table, a glass of wine untouched in front of her, papers spread out like battlefield debris. Bills, late notices, reminders she could no longer ignore. She looked up at me, her face softer than it had been in months. She started with small talk, asking about my day, about dinner. Then her voice wavered. "I know I've been difficult," she said, "but I think we can fix this. I just need you." Those last 4 words were supposed to be her trump card. For years, she believed I'd bend at the sound of her vulnerability. And maybe once I would have, but not anymore. I let her words hang in the air, offered her the faintest of nods, and walked past her without sitting down. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. My silence was answer enough. The next morning, she tried again, this time with a smile too wide, a breakfast she hadn't bothered to cook in years. Pancakes, bacon, the works. She set the plate down in front of me like it was a peace treaty. I ate without a word, thanked her politely, and left for work. I didn't give her the scene she wanted, the relief, the reconciliation. I gave her indifference. And indifference is colder than rejection. Meanwhile, her world outside kept shrinking. She tried reaching out to her circle, the ones who once applauded her sharp tongue and her curated life. But their replies were short, dismissive. They had seen her boast about her independence, about how she didn't need me. Now, watching her stumble back, begging for the stability she once mocked, they weren't impressed. They were entertained. At work, she faltered again, showing up late, distracted, excuses spilling faster than solutions. Even her boss, who once humored her charm, started to lose patience. She came home one night with eyes red from crying, slamming her bag down like the world had turned on her. What she didn't realize was that the world hadn't changed, she had. She was no longer admired. She was pitted. I said nothing. I let her sit in the silence she once weaponized. She had used it to punish me. Now it punished her. And the more she reached out, the more she realized the truth. I wasn't her safety net anymore. I wasn't even in the same game. She had compared me to her ex like I was less than. Now she was learning what life looked like with no one to compare at all. Her downfall wasn't loud. It was quiet, steady, inevitable. The kind of collapse that doesn't happen in one dramatic moment, but in a series of small humiliations that pile up until they crush you. I watched it happen piece by piece, never lifting a finger to stop it. Her friends were the first to drift away. The women she once bragged with at brunch, comparing vacations and shopping bags, stopped inviting her. At first, she pretended she was too busy, saying no to save face. But soon, the invitations stopped altogether. She scrolled through her phone at night, staring at pictures of dinners and parties she wasn't part of anymore. Her comments went unanswered, her messages ignored. She was learning that silence doesn't just come from one person, it spreads. Her family followed the same path. She tried to lean on them, but their patience wore thin. They remembered her arrogance, her endless boasting about independence, about how she didn't need anyone. Now that she was drowning, they weren't rushing to pull her out. When she called, they listened politely, but their voices carried the weight of disappointment. Even they had grown tired of her performance. Work was her last refuge, and even there, the cracks widened. She showed up late again, distracted, snapping at coworkers who once tolerated her. She was passed over for a project she had expected to lead, replaced by someone younger, hungrier, steadier. I could see it on her face when she came home. Red eyes, a forced smile, muttering about office politics. But we both knew the truth. She wasn't respected anymore. She was tolerated, barely. And all the while I was rising. At work, I was promoted. At the gym, I built myself back into the man I had been before she chipped away at me with her words. Friends reached out more, not less. My presence carried weight, not because I demanded it, but because I moved with calm certainty. People respect silence when it's backed by strength. She saw it too. The more she lost, the clearer it became to her that I wasn't suffering in the shadows. I was thriving in the light she thought she had stolen from me. Her casual cruelty, the line about her ex, the mocking tone, was now an anchor around her neck. Every time she replayed it in her head, she understood a little more. She had handed me the blade, and I had cut the cord. She thought she was building a life above mine. Now she was counting pennies alone, while I was building something untouchable. And there was nothing left for her to stand on. The day I closed the last joint account was the day I knew she had nothing left to cling to. For years, she had leaned on my structure, my discipline, my steady hand. She mocked it, belittled it, but she relied on it all the same. And now it was gone. Every safety net pulled, every door locked, every bridge burned. I didn't announce it. I didn't gloat. I simply moved my life out of her reach, one quiet step at a time. When she finally realized what I had done, it wasn't through me. It was through a bank letter, cold and impersonal, stating that she no longer had access. I can only imagine her face when she read it, the way her hands must have trembled as she realized the truth. She wasn't just broke. She was powerless. That evening, she tried to confront me. Her voice was sharp at first, demanding, almost rehearsed. "You can't just cut me off like this," she said. But the edge cracked, and within seconds the demand turned into pleading. "I just need a little help, just until I get back on my feet." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply looked at her, calm and unshaken, and said nothing. The silence broke her. She slammed her hand on the table, tears brimming in her eyes, shouting that I was cruel, heartless. Then the shouting stopped, and all that was left was her sobbing into her hands. For years, I had been the one absorbing her words, her jokes, her casual cruelty. Now the silence reflected it all back at her, louder than any reply could have been. She wasn't just losing money. She was losing me, losing the version of me who once carried her, who once waited patiently for her to see my worth. That man no longer existed. She tried to recover socially, desperate to prove she still had control. She told people she was reinventing herself, that she didn't need me or the money. But everyone saw through it. They remembered her arrogance, her endless comparisons, her mockery. Now, when they looked at her, they didn't see independence. They saw a woman who had bet against the man standing across from her, and lost. I never had to expose her. She did it herself. All I had to do was step back and let her fall into the silence she once thought she controlled. And now she understood. I wasn't punishing her. I was finished with her. By the time I stepped fully into my new life, she was already unraveling. My transformation wasn't loud, but people noticed. At work, I was sharper, focused, carrying myself with a weight she had never allowed me to show before. I earned a promotion, one that put me in front of new people, new opportunities. I wasn't the man she mocked anymore. I was the man she underestimated, and now the world was seeing it. Friends who had once seen me as quiet began to respect the steadiness they'd overlooked. They invited me out, leaned on me for advice, treated me as the man who had weathered a storm without flinching. Every handshake, every nod of respect reminded me of what I had reclaimed. She saw it too. We ran into each other at a mutual friends gathering. She arrived late, wearing a smile too forced, clothes that didn't carry the same weight they once did. When our eyes met, hers faltered. She was used to holding power in silence, but now the silence belonged to me. I didn't approach her. I didn't even acknowledge her presence beyond a polite nod. That was enough. The room noticed the distance, and so did she. Later, I overheard whispers. Friends asking quietly about her situation, commenting on how different she seemed. Some called it stress, others called it karma. She sat among them, laughing too loudly, trying to convince everyone she was fine. But the cracks showed. No one envied her anymore. They pitied her. Back at home, she couldn't hide from herself. The bills piled up higher, the late notices more urgent. She spent nights scrolling through social media, staring at the version of her life she could no longer maintain. Every picture of me at a new dinner, a new event, surrounded by people who respected me. It all cut deeper than words ever could. She had wanted me small, quiet, in her shadow. Now, I was untouchable, and she was invisible. She tried one last desperate move, posting online about her new chapter, trying to spin her downfall as choice. But the comments told the truth. People weren't impressed. They weren't buying her story. They saw through it. What she thought would be admiration turned into pity. And that was the worst punishment of all. I never had to lift my voice. I never had to shout. All I did was step out of her orbit, and the world saw her for what she really was. And for the first time, she was left with nothing but silence. Her downfall wasn't a sudden crash. It was a slow suffocation, like watching someone claw at the air while the walls close in. She tried to keep up appearances, but reality bled through in every move she made. Friends avoided her calls, family grew colder, and at work, the whispers turned into formal warnings. She was circling the drain, and everyone could see it but her. I didn't intervene. I didn't offer her a lifeline. I let the silence stretch until it became unbearable. The same silence she once used to make me feel small now pressed down on her like a weight she couldn't lift. Every time she sat across from me, trying to start a conversation, I answered with measured calm or nothing at all. She wanted anger. She wanted an explosion she could twist into a story of her victimhood. I gave her nothing. The bills kept piling. The credit cards she loved so much had been cut off. She pawned jewelry she once flaunted online. Even the car, technically under my name, was taken back quietly. She came outside one morning to find the driveway empty. I was at work by then, sipping coffee while she stood in shock. That's when the calls started. First to me, unanswered, then to anyone else who might still care. The phone kept ringing, but the responses never came. Her pride had been her armor, but now it was gone. She wandered through the house like a stranger, the same walls where she once mocked me now echoing with her silence. She looked smaller somehow, her arrogance drained away, leaving only fear. I noticed the change in her eyes the last time we crossed paths at home. She didn't look at me with superiority anymore. She looked at me with desperation. But I didn't bend. I gathered a few last documents from the desk, packed them into a folder, and walked past her without a word. She whispered my name like a question, but I didn't answer. That was the moment she realized there was no path back. No argument, no apology, no manipulation would bridge the distance I had created. I wasn't her anchor anymore. I wasn't even hers to reach. The world she built on arrogance and mockery had collapsed, and she stood alone in the ruins. And the silence between us had become her final punishment. The final cut came quietly, just like every move I had made until then. I didn't need drama. I didn't need shouting. I only needed to finish what I had started, closing every last door she thought might still be open. The divorce papers arrived at the house one morning. I wasn't there when she opened the envelope, but I didn't need to see it. I could picture it perfectly. Her sitting at the kitchen table where she once tossed her casual insults, her hands shaking as she read line after line that spelled out the end. There was no room for negotiation, no hidden clauses, no second chances. Just a clean, sharp end. When I came by later that evening to collect the last of my things, she tried to speak. Her voice was brittle, a whisper more than words. "We don't have to do this. I can change. We can start over." But it was too late. There was nothing left to change, nothing left to salvage. I didn't argue or explain. I looked her in the eye, then past her, and walked out with my box of belongings. The sound of the door closing behind me was the only answer she would ever get. She had once compared me to her ex, mocking me for not being enough, laughing as if my worth was a punchline. But now, the irony was brutal. She had no man to compare me to anymore, no safety net to fall into. The one she mocked had become the one she couldn't live without, and I was gone. Her world shrank into silence. The friends, the family, the job, the money, all gone or slipping away. She spent her nights alone in the same house that used to echo with her arrogance. Now, it echoed only with regret. She counted pennies, not because she wanted to, but because she had no choice. Every cent reminded her of the dollars I once provided, the stability she once mocked. And me? I didn't just survive her betrayal. I rebuilt myself stronger, sharper, untouchable. I wasn't living in her shadow anymore. I had left her behind in hers. She had wanted to wound me with words. Instead, her own words became her curse. "Even my ex earned more," she had said casually. Now, she lies awake counting pennies, while I sleep soundly, counting nothing but peace. That was the end. And it was colder, sharper, and more final than any revenge could ever be. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.